This month's free computer music plugin is a super compact, resource-friendly drum instrument that's designed to get the absolute most out of just a handful of samples. Grooove CM is an ingenious VST, AU and standalone device designed by German developers brunsandspork. With its straightforward yet powerful modulation system, you can bring life to boring static samples, create highly responsive playable drum kits, and craft exciting electronic rhythms and fills. And it comes packed with 50 exclusive built-in kits, 6 keys to load your samples into, 2 samples per key, 3 stereo outputs, 2 LFOs, and much more. In this getting started tutorial, we're going to show you how all of Grooove CM's main features work, and how we can go from a lifeless drum machine beat like this to a groovy drum part like this. To follow along, start a new 100 BPM project in your DAW and import bass.wav and rhodes.wav onto audio tracks. Turn the tracks down to -4 dB and then import beat.mid onto a MIDI instrument track. Load Grooove CM onto this track. And while you're at it, put a limiter on the master bus to prevent clipping. The central panel displays 6 keys, each is triggered by a MIDI note. Click the bottom one to select it and drag the sample kick.wav from the tutorial files folder onto sample slot 1. Or click the slot and use the pop-up menu. To find out what a control does, click the question mark button and hover over any control to see a description. You can also enable the clues option to find out what modifier keys are available at any given time. For example, if we hover the mouse over the volume knob and hold key number 1 on our computer's keyboard, Grooove CM tells us that command left mouse click will reset the value to default. Pressing key 2 on the computer keyboard tells us that shift click will let us set values with maximum precision, and so on. Be sure to give the included manual a good read, as it's packed with detailed instructions and useful hints and tips. The sound can now be triggered using MIDI note C1. Or a note of your choosing, selected in the MIDI input section in the upper right. The other 5 keys are identical in functionality and are, by default, mapped to C#1, D1, D#1, E1 and F1. Let's concentrate on just one key for now though. Note that Grooove CM automatically names the key according to the sample name, but you can double click the label to rename it. In the lower left sample pre-adjustment area, you can adjust the sample's volume, pan and pitch, as well as where playback starts from within the sample. And how much of it to play, that is, its length. Note that these changes are reflected in the waveform display at the top. There are also mute, level and pan controls for the key, affecting the overall output, which is useful when using 2 samples per key, which is something we'll explore later. Have a play, then Command or Control click to reset the parameters. Just one drum isn't much fun, so let's check out the 50 drum kits that come with Grooove CM. Click the upper left display and a drop-down menu appears, with various options for saving and loading kits. Click the CM Edition submenu to see our 50 kits. Select one that takes your fancy. You can flip through the kits with the up-down arrows in the upper left panel. And individual kit pieces can be switched out in the same way. Click a key, then use the up-down arrows in the sample selection panel, or click the waveform to browse by instrument or category. When you're done, reload the digger break kit. And use the key faders to turn the 2 hi-hats down by 4 dB and the kick and snare up by around 3 dB. You can hold shift for finer control. Grooove CM is all about using MIDI velocity to smoothly modulate between 2 sets of parameters. We've programmed a drum groove here that's got a lot of velocity variation, which is perfect for exploiting Grooove CM's capabilities. Click the third key tab, the digger break closed hat one, then click Sound Engine to access the key's modulation controls. Here's where you shape your drums and where the real fun begins. You just dial in how you'd like your drums to sound when played at minimum velocity and at maximum velocity, and Grooove CM takes care of the rest. In the velocity conditions section, turn the volume min knob up gradually. The soft MIDI notes get louder, eventually becoming as loud as the high velocity ones. Turn down volume max for an inverted volume response on the hi-hat, so high velocity MIDI notes are now quiet and low velocity ones are loud. Use the min-max slider beneath the lower waveform panel to see a preview of your drum hit at the chosen velocity. Now Command or Control click the volume min-max knobs to reset them to the defaults. We'll come back to the mix control, but next is pan. We use it on our hats, and set to extreme values, the hats jump back and forth between left and right as they alternate between soft and hard hits, but we only need a touch of movement here. Pan minimum at L25 and pan maximum at L40 will give our hats movement and life. Next, the cutoff and resonance controls introduce a low-pass filter, which removes high frequencies. Click the kick key, then turn min cutoff down to about 3 kHz to mimic how a real drum is brighter when struck harder and duller when struck more softly. Resonance emphasizes frequencies around the cutoff point, although we don't need that here. Pitch also comes in useful for mimicking a real drum, which will have a slightly sharp attack when hit harder. But first, try turning minimum pitch right down to -12 to exaggerate the effect. Notice how even the strongest kick drum hits are detuned now, which isn't what we wanted, and that's because, in our MIDI part, the hardest notes only hit MIDI velocity 100. They don't actually reach the maximum velocity of 127. Rather than adjusting your MIDI part, you can use the velocity dynamic controls to compensate. We set subtract add to 27 to boost our hardest kick hits up to the full value of 127. The range control allows you to exclude velocities outside a certain range by snapping them to range boundaries or ignoring them altogether. The velocity monitor makes this really easy to visualize, with blue and purple meters for incoming and resultant velocity. But back to those velocity conditions controls, and setting minimum pitch to minus 0.66 is fine for our kick drum. Next up comes the delay parameter, which offsets the start of each note, and subtle use of this can modify the groove. We set delay maximum to 15 milliseconds on the kick drum, so the hardest hits are a tiny bit late on the beat. And delay minimum to 20 milliseconds on the closed hat. This means that the hi-hat's 8th note pattern will take on a slight swing or shuffle feel because the softer offbeats are delayed more. "20 milliseconds is enough to give our groove a touch of realism without turning it into a full-on shuffle groove. Extreme values can be really useful for warped rolls and weird effects. The start parameter determines where the sample is played back from. Still on the closed hat, turn start min up to 52 milliseconds, so that lighter velocity notes start partway through the sample. This imitates the effect of the drummer alternating between shoulder and tip articulations. And if you're not sure what that means, see this issue's Dr. Beat tutorial with Ronan McDonald on page 86 of the magazine for an in-depth explanation. To exaggerate the effect, turn subtract add up to 32 in the velocity dynamics panel. The remaining velocity conditions controls apply fades to the start or end of a hit and set sample playback length. Fades are great for realistically softening the attack of low velocity notes. We use 8 milliseconds and 15 milliseconds respectively on our snare and kick here. Try shortening the length of low velocity notes for a clipped staccato feel that works really well for electronic beats. And remember to keep an eye on the waveform preview for visual feedback. Left of the velocity conditions, you will find the LFO column. Click the number to select which of the two global LFOs will modulate the selected parameter and enable it with the grey-green toggle. Slow values can be used for gentle, wandering modulations, but with fast values, the LFO becomes almost a random source. We set LFO1 to about 7 Hz, and use it to modulate the snare pitch by 4%, so each hit is a very slightly different pitch, just like when a rail drum is hit. The open hi-hat isn't sounding quite right, and that's for two reasons. First, we haven't set it to the same panning as the closed hat, which is an easy fix. And secondly, because the open hat overlaps the closed one. To fix it, click the open hat key, then click Edit in the lower right truncation trigger panel. Click plus to make a new group, select it, then in the notes section, add notes E1 and D#1. These are the hi-hat keys MIDI notes. You can assign any keys in the same way to have them choke each other when played. Each key has two sample slots, so click the snare key, then its sample sources tab, and drag snare_fat.wav, which is a compressed version of the same snare, onto the empty slot. Now we can use the mix knobs to blend the compressed sample in at higher MIDI velocities, faking the sound of compression. About 85 or 80 on the mix max knob is all it takes. Finally, let's route our sounds via the three stereo outputs in Grooove CM so that we can mix them using effects in our DAW. Click the snare key and set its output bus to stereo 2 L+R, then set the two hat keys to output bus stereo 3 L+R. Check out your DAW's manual if you're not sure how to route these channels. We can now apply mixing effects to our kick, snare and hats. On the kick drum, we've used SK Note's Snap, a very short room reverb from Acon Digital's CM Verb to give it thickness, and Sonima Satson CM for preamp style drive. On the snare, we've used Premix CM from Quasar, and on the hats, EQ from Earreckon's CM=87. Finally, we sent all the drums to a drum bus for some sweetening EQ from Overtone DSP's Program EQ CM. All of these effects and many more are included free with Computer Music Magazine. Now let's compare it to the original Groove with no effects and none of Grooove CM's velocity modulation trickery applied. Finally, let's check out an electronic example. All the drums are coming from Grooove CM, and we've also used the pitch, filter and sample length modulations to create this wandering, rain-like texture. Check out the difference it makes when we turn the modulations off. Check out this fill. We've used nearly all of Grooove CM's parameters, including delay, which makes the roll accelerate as it rises in velocity. The full version of Groove by brunsandspork has many extra features, including 8 stereo outputs, more kits, 128 keys instead of 6, 8 LFOs, and loads more. Check it out at brunsandspork.com.
Download over 30 exclusive plugins. Get hundreds of pro-quality samples and power up your production skills with in-depth tutorials. We break it down for you step by step, and you'll see exactly how it's done in expert video guides and producer masterclass sessions with pro producers. Get all this and more with Computer Music Magazine every month on iPad and iPhone, PC and Mac, Android, and in print.